Thanks for clicking on my video. Today we're going to be doing some technical analysis for the SPY, Qs, Apple, Tesla, Amazon, and NVIDIA. So we're going to get into that. And the first thing I just wanted to say as we look in the SPY on the daily is I did miss this because I was a little sick, this Thursday bar here. But overall, what we wanted to pay attention to was we are now closing below these shorter time frame moving averages, right? Which just pretty much tells you that we are going to go to that 200 pretty quickly, right? So as we do get to this level here, we are seeing that we're starting to test these lows. So there is potential for a double bottom, but the only thing is, even if you're looking at shorter time frames, our rule on this channel, you do not, just like the opposite way, this is the opposite in this case, if we do see that red bar and a cross on the MACD, we do not try to buy calls at this point, okay? Because most of the time, this momentum will carry you to lower levels, even if we do get some kind of rebound pop or rebound all the way up to here. Eventually, I do believe we will see it come down to a little bit lower levels testing this. Now, if we are wrong and say this does flip around, I'm just saying that this, most of the time, if you do get calls at this point, it will hurt you more often than it will help you, okay? And that's the overall takeaway from that. But right now, we can look for this to possibly come to lower levels, right? Possibly on Monday. And then we start to get some earnings next week with Amazon and things like that. So we could see some kind of divergence play out. And because those yields are starting to come off, we actually could see a bounce in stocks in, next week. The reason I think we could see some kind of bounce on Monday is because the VIX on Thursday was up by more than 10%. And if you know on this channel, we talk about when the VIX is up by more than 10% in one day, that means that there is an 85% chance for an update in the next 2 trading sessions. So how that could play out, we could get some kind of indecision, right? It could just be a small day. One really cool thing that would be very nice for the market is if we actually dip down to lower levels and then we're able to buy back up and we get a green bar like that. That would actually be a hint at some kind of reversal coming. Now, whether that is some kind of feeble bounce and then we head to lower levels, or if we actually can see that start to extend higher, we'll have to see. We'll update you on that throughout the week. Use pretty similar story. The overall place that I was telling you to pay attention to for a bounce was right here at this. So once we started to break below that level and there was no signs of recovery on shorter time frames, we should have known that the overall direction was to the downside. Now, do I think the Qs are going to be like the SPY and head to its 200? I mean, at this point, it has potential, right? It's probable that it could happen, right? We could come all the way down to here. But right now you can see that Bollinger Band is right at the bottom here of our little wedge forming. So we could just see some kind of, drop down to this level, maybe reaction, one more drop, and then we start to head to higher levels with that bull run into the end of the year. And since Jerome Powell did state that he was open to some kind of pausing in the next couple of months because the bond market might be doing his job for him, we actually could see some good news with that statement and see some upside into the end of the year. Now, Apple here, this is one thing that I also would not be buying calls, even if it is on shorter time frames. Now, volatility is higher, so if you are a day trader and you know how to do it, don't necessarily fully pay attention to this. Just know that the overall momentum is to the downside. You have that red impression on the MACD. You have it below the center line on the MACD. You have an RSI that is below 50. All of this is going to do, pretty much it's going to do what we were talking about a few days ago. We would like some kind of test of the bottom of this purple zone, okay? And you notice that lines up with the 200 very well. It lines up with our Bollinger Bands very well. This level right here is going to be something I'm really going to pay attention to. And if we do get outside that, I'm going to be paying attention to some kind of reaction down here at lower levels, okay? So if we do get that reaction a little bit lower, you can see that we would set up on the MACD a triple divergence. We would see that proven on the RSI as well. And we could lead, with some good news, that could lead into a huge pop in Apple. One thing that really surprised me was actually Tesla breaking that to the downside with those terrible, pretty much everything about the earnings I think was bad. So this reaction is warranted. I did have that level marked of about 207.42 for you to pay attention to. I don't think I really mentioned it, so sorry about that, but I will try to, be better about mentioning levels that I am paying attention to with breaks. You notice I had those to the upside as well as paying attention to these 2 lines up here. Down here, I was paying attention to this 207.42, and I believe that we could see a little bit more downside before we get some kind of reaction. Now, we did leave a gap here on Tesla, and, gaps do like to fill within, 5 trading sessions, 80% chance of filling within 5 trading sessions. So right now you have 2 sessions down. Doesn't mean by the end of the week we can't get some kind of good news to possibly go fill that gap, okay? This is a very big gap, so we could leave it, for quite some time. But right now, the way that the SPY and the Qs look, it looks like if we do get some kind of good news in the next few days, that we could see some kind of bullish reaction. We did say Amazon was probably the tightest of these Bollinger Bands, right? It's really tight, so we're expecting an explosive move to lead to some kind of expansion of these Bollinger Bands. And what's happening right now is you're getting that sell signal, and the MACD hasn't even confirmed this to the downside. So I do believe that there is some pretty big downside in Amazon unless it's able to hold up at one of these lows. I really think that Amazon is going to come down all the way into its 200 pretty quickly before those earnings. And then we can look at Amazon as maybe the savior of the week, right? If they report these earnings here and they are good numbers, that could lead to, people starting to think that other numbers that will come out, say with Apple on November 1st or 2nd when they report, could be good news. So overall, I really just want to be paying attention to this divergence. If it does set up and play out and we get those good numbers from Amazon, maybe the hint of the pausing with some kind of Fed speaker comes out, we could see that big reaction. And I'll give you guys those measured moves for this come tomorrow night. Okay, so tomorrow night's video, please subscribe so you guys are able to see that tomorrow. NVIDIA, what have we been saying ever since we saw this red bar up here? Ever since we saw that red bar up there, yes, we said, hey, we could get some kind of retest. That actually ended up happening. And then once this bar happens, you for sure know that what we've been talking about since this red bar is going to play out. We are probably going to see a test of that neckline, and we'll have to see how stocks or how NVIDIA reacts from that level, okay? It is a little bit lower than this, which means that the shorts will start to pile up while also the market will be taking out a bunch of stops. So that means we could actually cut below this level, take out those stocks, maybe even go a little bit lower as a fake out. And then if we get some good news, we could project to the upside. Now, if this does start to break, retest, and break again, we could see this full measured move, right, play out. So we want to take this and just see where this could go. Okay, we put it right here. We notice that I told you that I would not necessarily be looking for the 200 to hold up very well because there is nothing in here to hold it up. Look, there's no price action. Okay, so that can really drop through that very quickly. So we want to be paying attention to, well, it lines up perfectly with this high right here. So we actually see that the first point where it probably could find buyers is around, in this area of that gap fill. That's what I'm going to pay attention to if we see really rapid downside in NVIDIA. One thing we do have to pay attention to is the VIX. Okay, so on Thursday, we actually should have, if you were paying attention to this and if you've been subscribed to this channel, you would have been paying attention to this. We are getting exactly what I said we need to happen in order for us to see further downside, a full closing bar above 20. Okay, so that's why you're going to see that downside. And now we're getting kind of a topping out bar. We're getting some fading, right? So if we do see some kind of projection upward, we can see if that turns around, and I would be paying attention to this little bit of a trend line here. I think if this trend line really starts to get closed below on a daily basis, we will start to see a big pop in the market. How big that pop can be is very dependent on what happens if we get that pause or something, say at the end of the month when they do announce, their rate raising and things like that. Or their Fed rate decision, we could see a very big bull run into the end of the year. If they do not announce that, we could see some kind of retest banking on some of that news. And then if they don't do that and they say we're actually going to raise rates, you're going to see this go up one more time. For now on the VIX, you can pay attention to some divergences, right? We have divergence down here on the RSI. We have divergence actually on the MACD. That's pretty flat right now. So we actually could see those divergences play out. If they do play out, I do think we will see that pop in the market, and we just have to see if that is setting up another, lower high, or if we are actually going to get enough news to start to break some prior highs to give us another upward move into the end of the year. Now, one thing that's a slightly good sign is we did see those yields start to drop off on Friday. So those yields are dropping off on Friday, and you'll notice there is some divergences forming on the RSI and the MACD. So we actually could see those yields start to head to lower levels. The only thing with the yields that I really think we need to pay attention to is look how close the 2-year and the 10-year are now. So now those are starting to get to the point where they look like they're going to uninvert. Now, when that uninversion happens, it doesn't mean that stocks have to plummet right away with recession instantly, right? An average of the time, it takes 6 to 18 months, right, for that to actually come to fruition, which means this coming down, even if it does uninvert, people will see that as good news, and then maybe we do get some kind of bull run in the market with these divergences playing out. But I really, really want to emphasize how you need to be paying attention to these numbers starting to uninvert, and just know that when they do uninvert, if we do get some kind of bull run, it most likely just means that we are going to see even more pain in the future. We can switch over to TLT, and the overall place that I was telling you to pay attention to was this 8250 and seeing some kind of divergence play out. And you notice we are seeing that divergence right here. Oops, I kind of made it skinny. We are seeing that divergence start to form on this MACD here. So if we do see this divergence start to play out, we can get a very strong move in these bonds, okay? So this is something that I'm really paying attention to. Like I said, I am a TLT investor. So if we did come down all the way to 8250, that would be great. But right here, we will get buyers around this area. So we could see that reaction coming very soon. So the overall takeaway from this video is we are seeing that downside come to fruition with that closing bar on the VIX above 20, just like we said. So pay attention to what the VIX is doing. If we start to see that drop off and we do get some kind of good news, we actually could see a pop in the market very quick. But I am assuming that there is more downside because we are seeing those MACDs roll over at this point. So there may be more downside, but we could look for a bounce over the next week or two. Thank you guys for making it to the end of my video. I really, really appreciate it. And I hope you guys have the best weekend, and tune in for Sunday's video because we're going to go a little bit more in depth, maybe even get into shorter time frames and give you those weekly ranges. Okay. Have a good weekend. Peace.